All right, so today we're talking about the 2003 film Identity, directed by James Mangold, who is known for such franchises such as the X-Men franchise. He did Logan. He also tried to reboot Indiana Jones, so he tried to reboot a few franchises here. I love Logan. Logan's incredible. I thought Indiana Jones was kind of fun. I enjoyed it. And Ford v Ferrari is a pretty good movie. Those are the ones that I've seen there. I've also seen 310 to Yuma, which is fine. Kate and Leopold, which is like whatever. But I decided to watch Identity from 2003, and I was pleasantly surprised. So the way I came onto this movie actually was a bit silly. So me and my friends who don't really watch like too many movies, we like to watch like mind-bending movies. And so I gave them a few examples of movies that we could watch. We didn't end up going with this. We ended up going with the 2003 film Exam, which was not really that great, but it was kind of funny. But this one got on my radar, and it was very interesting. I do love, crime movies, and it just had an interesting log line and a decently positive review, so I thought I'd check it out. And it's kind of the type of movie that I'm just glad gets made. We need more of these type of like original stories that, are self-contained, they're pretty gripping. And I mean, it was only 90 minutes long. It wasn't very long, but it was just like a writer and a director really trying something. And I don't know if it landed 100%. There was a few maybe like silly moments when it was supposed to be serious, especially near the end. But I really appreciated what they were going for and the psychological aspects. They were really trying hard with that. And I think a lot of it still did land. And it was just like a fun, original ride along the way. Nothing too crazy, nothing too serious, but it was pretty good. I did quite enjoy it. So without going into spoilers, you can see from the logline here that during a storm, a bunch of strangers, they arrive at a motel at a similar time. There's no way out. Both of the roads are blocked. There's floods on each side, and they can't go anywhere. So they're all stuck at this motel, and then people start dying, and they got to figure out who the killer is. So it's just Among Us in real life, really. I mean, yeah, that premise is interesting in itself, but then the subplot of everything, which is revealed later, is what is driving the movie and is like the main gripping feature of the movie. And I think it pulls it off pretty well. I think that the movie is shot very well. It's like, it is a thriller, but it does play it off as a horror movie, very Psycho-esque, at a hotel. And this is like so rainy. This is like the wettest movie ever. There's so much rain. It's always raining. And I mean, it really does enhance the mood. And I think that early on, some of maybe the conveniences that happen, or just the tropes that are being overplayed, like the rainy hotel, like people getting killed off, and that drama does seem a bit overplayed. But as the story actually goes on, and the stereotypical characters, the stereotypical just genre conventions start to make sense because of the plot that they're playing with. And I appreciate movies that when the plot twist happens, it makes me look back at the movie as a whole and be like, okay, I definitely understand why this happened, and I appreciate it more that way. So going into spoilers, I think that the twist was done in an interesting way. It kind of seemed like the writers were trying to piece together the best way to guide the viewer along the story, because it doesn't start in a correctional facility, but it starts speaking about this guy who's going to go on death's row the next day because he had committed a murders, I forget where, in like a hotel or something. Not this specific hotel, but there were these murders committed, and this guy's going on death's row. But then this one lawyer is trying to argue for him to get him off death's row. They're trying to argue multiple personality disorder. And then we switch 180, where the meat of the movie is at this hotel. It seems to be a completely detached story, and eventually we're going to figure out how it weaves together. And so initially, I had started to think that when all these characters are coming to this hotel, we have Ray Liotta's character come in with Jake Busey's character, and he's saying that he's a cop and he's transferring this prisoner. And I originally assumed that was the prisoner that we were talking about in this courtroom who was getting his sentence to death row, and then that they were going to be late. And so I thought that was what was going on initially. And I do like that bait and switch that they pulled, because eventually, during the middle of the narrative at the hotel where everybody's getting killed off, they cut right back to the court the court people. It wasn't really a courtroom. They're kind of just around a table. They cut to the lawyers, and then they say that the killer has been brought in and he made it there safe. And to me, it made no sense because it was like, oh, I thought the killer was literally in this town. Or sorry, I thought the killer was at this hotel, but I guess this timeline isn't matching up because I thought it was a timeline at the same time. But apparently it wasn't. And I thought that was a good switch because it really made you think. Because when they wheeled in the prisoner, they only showed the back of the head. They didn't reveal the big plot twist yet. So I did like how they slowly revealed things. But I think that a lot of those clues were fun to catch on to. But eventually it's really in your face. And some of the conveniences that made them figure out the big piece of the puzzle were a bit like convenience. It was like Amanda Pete's character. She was like, all right, I'm done with this. Oh man, I just want to go home, or I want to go to my oranges. I want to grow oranges, live my life. I'm turning 30 next week, guys. I just want to go. And then everyone's like, you're turning 30 next week? It's my birthday next week too. And then everyone else is like, me too. It's my birthday next week too. And that's how they kind of figured things out. And then we have all their licenses have a location in America on their names. So everybody's character had like something to do with a location. Okay, it doesn't say Ed's last name, but we have Rhodes, Rhode Island. We have Paris. Okay, I guess it wasn't a location in America. It was just locations. We had George York. Why do some of them say the last names, but some of them don't? We have Louisiana. That is actually his name. We have Robert Maine, Malcolm Rivers. That's the that's the prisoner. So he's not actually one of them. Then we have who else we got? Okay, I think that's Alice York. We have Alice York. So they put those conveniences in to try to like piece that puzzle together, but I don't really think it was like that necessary. I think there could have been a more meaningful, creative way that they could have like tied everybody together. But at the same time, the characters in the town, in the story, didn't need to know that they were all in the killer's mind. If John Cusack's character figures that out, that makes sense. But I think the way he could have figured it out could have made a bit more sense. It could have been a bit more interesting, really. It could have been. But I do like when it was revealed, he starts to hear voices that are just like completely detached from what's going on. And it's that poem about the man who wasn't there. Go up the stairs, the man who wasn't there. I wish he was never there, or something like that. But that poem was very interesting. It bookmarked the story. We have it at the very beginning and at the very end. And the man who wasn't there, how does that connect to the story? So that short excerpt really talks about, the main themes of the movie are very interesting about multiple personality disorder. And the way that it personified that with all these different characters who are all a part of the killer's mind, and this whole scenario in the hotel is just the killer's different personalities fighting with each other, trying to gain the spotlight, trying to kill off the other personality so that they put them to rest for good, and so that just good ones come out in the end. The way that is played with, personified, I did enjoy it. I thought it was pretty cool. And going back to that poem, it's an interesting thought about the man who wasn't there, but I'd wish he'd leave me alone. And if we're talking about that in terms of, psychological multiple personality disorder, it could just be like, a voice in your head, that other person, that multiple personality that is just like telling you things. And it's like that's appearing randomly, that man who's just randomly coming out, and, you wish it wasn't there. You wish there wasn't that other voice in your head, but there is. Yeah, it's an interesting thought. It's just like something that really isn't in real life, and they're personifying it. But if we're actually taking a step back and just ignoring the hotel scene as a whole and thinking about that poem, the man who wasn't there is the voice in your head that isn't actually, I don't want to say not actually real, but not actually physical. And so it makes sense that it wasn't there. And I feel like I just over-explained that like concept that people probably understood, but I'm just trying to lay it out like, okay, I'll move on. But, in general, I think that the movie had an interesting enough premise, and I think it was original, really trying for something. And like I said at the beginning, it's just a movie that I appreciate that was made and that the effort was put in for an original story. And the last thing I'll say, I think, is about the ending that so we have the killer. We think that Amanda Peet's character, what's her name? Paris? Yes, Paris. We think that she had won. So John Cusack's character, he comes up with all the lawyers. He appears. His personality takes the forefront, takes the spotlight. And then he's talking with them, and he figured things out. He's piecing things together. Oh my gosh, I have multiple personalities. That's crazy. We got to kill the killer. So if we kill the killer in the killer personality, then that means it's put to rest for good, and that this guy is never going to kill again because the killer's gone. So they think it's Ray Liotta because he was a pretend cop, actually a convict who broke out and pretended to be a cop. And John Cusack's character kills him, but also gets killed in the process. Oh no, only Paris is left. Only Amanda Peet's character is left. And we're like, okay, that's fine. She's nice enough, she has some morals. So she's driving to her orange farm, but then she finds the key, number 1, because all the deaths were linked to the keys. It went 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. And then she was number 1. She's like, what? I thought I escaped this. I thought I was the last one. And the kid was the killer all along. And I think the threads that they put in earlier on, it was pretty satisfying, because they mentioned earlier on that the killer in real life, his mother was a prostitute who kind of left him in a car at hotels and really just didn't treat him very well. And that he had that experience as a child, and then there was these crime at a hotel when he was young. And it's like, okay, that makes a lot of sense that he was the killer in the end. And yeah, so I guess Amanda Peet's character really does represent his mother, and then him as a child, as the kid in this whole scenario, the innocent one with just the closeted rage, ends up being the killer because that was his experience as a child, and it really just shaped who he was. And I think it made sense that it was the kid, but the way it's played off in the final montage showing him killing everybody was a bit silly. I don't know. The kid just holding that garden weapon when he's going to kill her at the very end. Him walking away from the car explosion, being like, hey, I did that. Yeah, it was a little silly. But I did like the twist. Played off a little silly. Maybe that was a James Mangold, not a writing decision. It's hard just to show that it was the kid without having those silly moments. But I don't know. It was still fun. I enjoyed it for what it was. I would recommend it. I had a good time with Identity.